Welcome, everyone. I was about to say welcome, Anahario, but I'm saying welcome, everyone. I'm Anahario. It's all good. Welcome, Anahario. No, welcome to this afternoon event. My name is Anahario Della. I'm the co-founder, co-director of the St. John's International Circus Fest. This is one of our many events. This is one of our beloved panels that we've had since the beginning, but it's changed a little bit throughout. So today I think we're in for a real treat with this gorgeous panel behind me. I would like to introduce Holly. She is a trailblazer in Ontario. She does a lot of stuff for the Ontario circus community. We are very honored and thrilled to have had you as part of our festival since the very beginning. We're really looking forward to you moderating this. And yeah, she has a new training center in Welland. She also runs Femme de Feu, and she's just a maker, creator, and a wonderful person. So thank you, Holly, for joining us. And I'm going to let you take this over from here. So thank you, and bon panel. Okay.
Yeah, wonderful. So I'm actually going to start. My timer is not working, or I'm not sure how to turn on the code for the timer. If one of you lovely gentlemen can help with that, that would be helpful to keep us on track. Otherwise, we'll probably be here for much too long. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anna, so much for the introduction. So I'm Holly Treddenick, and it's really just such a pleasure and an honor to be here with these wonderful people. I wanted to say thank you to Anna and Beni and all of the folks at Wonderbolt and all of the folks at this festival. I'm sure it was not easy to be here and for all of us to gather here in person and online and all the different platforms that are going on. So I just want to really thank you for all of your work. It's really, really appreciated. I'm very honored to be facilitating this discussion and to be here asking all of you some questions and with all of you here. Our panel today is about community, and we're going to be talking about community building, bringing community together, and being here at this festival. This festival is such a great example of community and how wonderful that can be. The rejuvenation, support, and growth that comes from community. This festival is really a beautiful example of that, and that really comes down from the founders of this festival. So thank you. So it's really relevant to be talking about that while we're here, which is really great. The idea of community was really highlighted during the pandemic for many, many people. Many of us kind of realized what community meant to us or what it didn't mean, what we lost from our community or the community that we had, new communities forming. So that was, this is a really relevant topic that's come out of the pandemic, which is one of the reasons we're here talking about it today. This topic is also kind of growing off of an ongoing conversation that we've been having for the past 6 years or so at many of the different festivals that have been going on across Canada. At the MIC, at Circus Sessions, this year at the new Alberta Circus Arts Festival, and here at St. John's. So over the years of talking about connecting circus across Canada, we've talked a lot about different things, a lot about funding. We've introduced our communities and our own sort of local, regional situations for circus, where we are. And we've talked a lot about the challenges, but today we really wanted to sort of shift that and look at the importance of community or ideas around community and community building. And wanted to make this feel inspiring and have some tools that you can maybe take back with you to your own communities and your circus regions. So we're excited about that. We're hoping to keep it really uplifting and inspiring, which of course with these people it is. Just sitting here is inspiring, and having this festival happening here is all just very inspiring. So the fantastic folks that we have here on our panel today are all really big community builders and activators in their own regions. They're all coming from very different perspectives, so have a lot to share with us from their own experiences. And we're going to take a sort of traditional format or a tried and true format to our panel today. I'm going to introduce everyone, ask some questions, they're going to respond, and then we'll have the audience, we'll open up the space to the audience, live and virtual, to ask some questions to our panelists. And I also want to let you know that there's a visual scribe. Her name is Tanya Gadsby, and she's joining from Vancouver. Yes. So she's going to be doing this really cool thing. They've done this at the festival a few times, so some of you have seen this, but it's really, really cool. She's drawing and writing words, and she's going to end up with this gorgeous poster at the end that represents what this panel has kind of brought forward in a sort of abstracted way. So it's really, really cool. There's many layers happening here today. So yeah, thanks all of you for being here, and thank you for those of you who are joining us virtually. I'm going to give a little introduction to all of our panelists, and then we'll dive into some questions. Beni Malone, sitting right here. Beni is the founder and artistic executive director of Wonderbolt Circus. He has spent the past 4 decades creating shows, developing workshops, touring, forging partnerships, and promoting circus. And he's here based in St. John's, for those of you who are joining from elsewhere, which I can imagine has had some challenges and difficulties building from a very small roots that way. So yeah, great. Congratulations on the work you've done. Tuedon Ariri, sitting here to my left. Tuedon is a contemporary circus artist specializing in aerial contortion straps, originally from Vancouver and now based in Montreal for the past 10 years. She graduated from the National Circus School in 2017 in Montreal and has since went on to work with Cirque du Soleil, Cirque Gauloise, and Seven Fingers. And in 2020, must not have, well, it's interesting, I guess that came out of the pandemic. She founded a new collective called Sanctuaire, that is a collective searching to explore the gray matter that exists between circus, movement, and architecture. Through all of her creations, Tuedon strives to evoke a visceral experience through distinctive visual aesthetics. Very cool. Yeah, thank you. Wow. Catherine Jacques is here joining us. Thank you. Live shows enthusiast and avid consumer of living arts since a young age. Catherine has always aspired to play a part, but not as a performer. Very important role. Thank you for dedicating yourself to that. She started as a booking agent in music and then had a coup de foudre, which we might have to ask you what that means, for contemporary circus.
Absolutely. Coup de foudre, what would it be? Light love. I found
Love at first sight.
I love at first sight. Yeah, of course. Okay. And she is now spending her days and dedicating her work life reaching out to presenters, venues, and festivals all over the planet to promote contemporary circus companies from Quebec and make sure that our productions and artists travel as much as possible. Challenge at the moment, but yeah, for the world to discover and appreciate. And she is working with Flip Fabrique right now, who is here in Newfoundland.
Yep.
Thank you. And Alice Kopp is here. Alice is a graduate in art history and in management of cultural organization. Alice has been working as a circus arts manager since 2007. In 2020, she created a new company called La Compagnie des Autres with Antoine Carbanier-Lépine and Nicolas Fortin, a company that supports the creation and young creative circus arts companies and artists. So an arts management company for circus. Yeah, that's amazing. Alice uses her expertise of administration towards artistic projects that she is passionate about. Her mantra is to support the creation and diffusion of circus arts. Thank you. It's also great. And Ruth Wikler is here. Ruth is the Deputy Director of Programming for Circus Arts at Tohu in Montreal. Together with General Director and Director of Programming, Stéphane Lavoie, she oversees most of Tohu's circus-related programs, performances, residencies, and arts market, and a museum-style collection of circus history, art, and objects. Among many other experiences, Ruth is a graduate of Circo Media Centre for Contemporary Circus and Physical Theatre in Bristol, England. Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Very exciting place to work. The art collection is like really cool there. It's very exciting. Thank you. And Annie Dugan. Annie Dugan is over here in the beautiful sparkly shirt. When Annie Dugan moved to Edmonton, Alberta in 1999, the circus community was non-existent. It's kind of amazing that we've got a few people here who have really built up their circus community from really from scratch. Yeah, from nothing. And here we are today sitting all together in St. John's, live together physically and virtually, really expanded the reach. Yeah, it's very cool. Where was I? Okay, so she co-founded Firefly Theatre and Circus, and she started the Firefly Circus Academy, now in its 18th year of teaching. Yeah. Wow.
It's 18, it can vote.
Yeah, it can vote. That's amazing. It's an adult. Teaching people to fly. This past June, Annie launched the Alberta Circus Arts Festival in an online version and is looking forward to, as are we, the in-person version in 2022. Yeah, thank you. So as you can see, we have a really great group of people, very much community activators here, so it's great. I'm going to launch into some questions, and then after we have a few discussions, we'll open up the floor, live and virtual. So reflect and see if any questions come to you as we're talking through this. So first off, this is for you, Beni. What does community mean for you? And this can be, is there maybe a difference professionally or personally?
Well, community is that whole ecosystem that lets you survive, I think, and thrive. Professionally, in where I'm from, St. John's, the arts community, I love being part of the arts community here. I tell people, we're a city that's 1,000 miles away from just one other city. And that's a lot, Most people have a radius of urban areas around them. We don't. So our arts community is interdependent and has been interconnective for a long time. So, the visual arts, the written arts, music, which Newfoundland is really strong in, and circus, which Newfoundland is becoming strong in, have all had to work together. When we first had a circus company and we were doing bigger circuses and, there wasn't a lot of circus artists here, but we had fabulous musicians. So we always had live bands, live shows, we always used actors maybe for ringmasters, things like that. So we interconnected. You use what you have, and we were used to it here. We're, people are always asking for help in one way or another. So the arts community is, you talk about multidisciplinary and interdependent. We've always had that. It's not a new catchphrase. We've always had it. My personal community is even stronger. Like the volunteers we have, my friends are always helping me out. It's an island, so people have to help each other out. You might get mad at someone, but 2 weeks later you're going to need a hand. So you can't get too mad at them, right? So, and then family, of course, which is the most important part of the community for me. And I've been blessed with a great family and extended family. So that's all been part of it.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. It is true. Really makes me think of the importance of collaboration and how obvious and necessary that must be here.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think people now, you talk about the recent developments, people are realizing that it's important for everybody, and it's enriching for everybody, and it changes the game for people, and it gives them new boundaries, new doors to enter, and new rooms to play in. So it's always good.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Ruth. This is for those of you who know me, I love panels, and I love asking people questions about their practice and what they do, so I'm just in my glory.
Yes, Holly.
Thank you. What are the necessary building blocks of a strong arts community? Broad question. Anything that comes to mind for that?
I think ecosystem is a great word that Beni mentioned. So for sure, a community of artists, meaning in cities and arts communities that I've seen, they're very vibrant, professional level training, is very important because professional level training in a certain community generates a regular outflow of graduates who often stay in that community, and also it attracts folks that are predisposed to be audience members as well. So professional level training. Second is folks sticking around and making stuff. So just residents, people who stay in a place and find a social and professional milieu in which to basically be able to try stuff out in front of peers. So to be able to have that kind of safe space of research where you're saying, hey, what if I did this? And then you have like a pretty rigorous group of people who are able to respond and say, that really doesn't work. And so that you can have that kind of feedback well before it goes to the general public. I think a pipeline of support for creation along its entire lifespan. So what comes to mind is there's an amazing place in Toulouse called La Granerie, which literally what they do is they target only the phase of artistic development of an artist after you've finished professional training, but before you've made your company. And just to have an institution that only focuses on that kind of weird embryonic period where you're looking for your voice but you haven't found it yet, and just to give safe space to like try and figure it out really reflects kind of an attunement to artist life, the kind of span on it. And then I think another element is, I think maybe I'm going beyond artists. Well, this all supports an artist community, but obviously venues that don't prioritize commercial profits. So venues that house risk, that cultivate an audience that is excited about risk. And then journalism. Arts critics, publications that will, basically foster lively dialogue from the audience perspective around what they're seeing, so that not just artists can give feedback on other artists, but also the public via journalists can give feedback and keep that excitement. So those are sort of ingredients that come to mind about what is a healthy ecosystem, and actually. I think that's all local in a place. So I'm not thinking about the wider. Of course, there's the field that spans geographies, and that's sort of another element. I think being part of an artist community, specifically if you're in a place that doesn't have all those elements, feeling like you belong to a broader community that spans geography is probably quite important. But that feels like an important kind of nucleus.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love how you were saying like this word ecology. Like, it's so ecosystem and ecology. Like, there's so many different elements into what makes up a strong community, and like the schools, the venues, the independent artists, the large companies, and what is in a smaller city, and how we connect like hyper local into sort of the broader like national and even international community, and how it all plays together.
The other thing I'd add is people who are playing lots of different roles within the community. So not only actors or performers, but also directors and also producers and all, administrators. So folks who kind of come in at every angle is quite healthy. Like, if you have a kind of overload of one role but not enough of another role, it tips the balance out as well. Right. So it's interesting to hear Beni talking about a community that maybe in Circus didn't have all those resources, but if you look across the art forms, maybe they did, and it's not a bad idea for Circus particularly to kind of reach out to other art forms if there's not enough of some one thing or another, tap into those other disciplines' resources in that way.
It's so interesting that you just touched on the balance of those things too, and how an ecosystem or an ecology can come in and out of balance and tip in different ways. It's interesting to reflect on that. It's not just important to have the elements, but what is the balance between all the elements? Annie. how do you support your community? So this is a bit multi-layered.
Okay.
So how do you support your community, and how does your community support you? So thinking about that reciprocity, and then what is the reciprocity of community?
Well, I think that Circus really illustrates the reciprocity factor so well. In my personal experience, I started as a circus artist in a community that didn't have any circus. So people would invariably ask me after my performance, where can I learn how to do that? Well, there wasn't anywhere. So I started a school. I didn't want to train alone. You know, as a circus artist, you can't train by yourself in a vacuum. And so I started a school, and fairly quickly my students got very good, and they became instructors and performers. And then their friends and family came to the shows, and then they became our new students. And it just perpetuates. And it's really exciting because it builds this momentum, and then it's our job as leaders to harness that momentum, to go somewhere with it. So we need to come in then with a dream, with a goal, with a vision. And the community then can support us by buying in, by saying, yes, let's bring your vision to life. And like you were speaking about before, this festival is like the perfect example of that. You know, Beni and Anna had this dream, and the community bought in, and here we all are.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's interesting. I've been hearing quite a few times, this idea of like harnessing something and it takes off, and you're kind of just like, are you controlling it? Are you steering it? Or are you just like holding on, like, and it's whipping away, and you're just like trying to follow along and stay on?
I think we're all inspiring each other. You know, we inspire the students, they inspire us. It's reciprocal.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks, Annie. Tuedon, welcome.
Thank you.
What examples of community building actions have inspired you? Within or without the circus community? Within or out of?
Well, I think just being here is super inspiring to hear all these amazing people speak about their roles in the community and how each role is essential for the whole community to grow and to continue to move on together. So I think just being here is a wonderful example of that, like many people have said. And then something that actually really inspires me is I was reading this book, The Life of Trees. I don't know if you know that book.
I've read it, I love it.
Yeah, and something that really stuck with me was this idea that when one tree is not doing well, the other trees actually use the mycelium and band together to help the tree that's not doing well, to counter this idea of nature is, violent and they all help each other and help the one who needs to survive. And I think that idea really stuck with me and inspires me in community building and in how, as a community, you can get together to help the person, the organism, the whatever it is that needs to be supported and grow. And then once that the balance has been restored and everyone's healthy again, we can all grow together and continue to shine as a group.
Yeah. No, that's such a really cool, beautiful image to think about. I'm wondering, saying that, and we can really understand, how important that is. I'm wondering, if that's not happening in a community, it also kind of really demonstrates, or it can really demonstrate, thinking of the trees and the mycelium underground, if those trees don't come help that person, that tree is just gonna kind of fall.
Yeah, and when one person falls, we all fall. So it's really this idea of we're all in this together. It's a collective community, the circus community, and we all want to see everyone succeed. And if, like you said, if one person is down, we're all in a way down. If you see it not as a individual thing or individual company, individual person, but you see it as a one, then it's so essential to help. And I think that's something that's amazing with the circus community is I've always felt so supportive by when I was at the school, before even I went to the school, by my coaches, by, for example, Alice's company, La Compagnie des Autres, is really helping young artists. And yeah, I think everyone is this festival, So, yeah.
Wow. That's so great. I know that there's also a whole other side, and thankfully, I hear a lot of people talk about like this beautiful support in Circus, but in so many other art forms, it's not like that, or is often not like that, and it feels very competitive or really trying to like fight for your place, and it doesn't feel like that same sort of support. So it's which is a really, really not. It's a really bad feeling when you feel like you're by yourself and you have to just fight to find your place. And I think that's such a really cool, unique thing that Circus is so strong with community, and it's so great to hear everybody talking about their experiences that way and how important that is in our community. I think that's really, really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. Catherine?
Hi.
Hi. My question for you is, how can we draw inspiration from outside the Circus community, and what has inspired you?
Oh wow, that's a weird question for me, because actually when I first met Circus, it was a big surprise in my life. I was coming from the outside, and I felt as an outsider, and I was quite scared to feel like an imposter for a long time. And actually it was a bit of reverse for me. I've been so inspired and felt so welcome by this community that I didn't know about. They didn't know about me. I was a newbie. I was coming from music. I was in the offices, so sometimes there's quite a distance between the offices and the artists and the shows and the performers. But I found it very different when I came into Circus, actually, and I was agreeably surprised by that. So I'll reverse a bit the question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. Please do.
So yeah, actually, I'm basically, if you really vulgarize my work, I remain a salesperson, but I feel really uncomfortable with competition. So it's a bit of an opposite, and I really found, I think, my ex working with the contemporary circus industry. I thought that arts and culture at large was my place at first, but then it really narrowed down to Circus a couple of years ago. I find that within this community, I mean, it's not perfect, and nobody's perfect, and nothing's perfect, but there's something very special about it, and the way that everybody, no matter from where you are geographically, which company you've been working for, what's your path, and or who you are collaborating with right now, everyone is supportive to everyone. And as Tuedon says, and I really feel like it, you want to see everybody succeed, and you feel supportive to everybody, because we are all advocates for Circus at large, I guess. And in order to captivate audiences and generate this interest from everyone and everywhere, we need everyone's color to be put together. And I was also amazed by the way that artists could work with one company and then another, and then get together for special projects and interact with different consultant and person to guide them and help them. And I've been helped by person who were supposed to be my competitors, and they've been very generous with me. So I feel like there's not a lot of unhealthy competition in this industry, and it's something that I find very inspiring in day-to-day life. It's the way I try to live in my personal community, trying to be aware and available for everyone. And I know that, I think that we should all, consider that it's important to minimize your unhealthy ego and be very open, respectful, and considerate towards others, because of course we are stronger together, and you can always learn something from someone and give something in return without even noticing it sometimes. And so that's my personal way of doing things, and I really found that into the circus community, and that was really inspiring and appealing for me. So yeah, and I'm hopeful that we can keep that in mind all together and keep making things happen that way and being supportive to everyone, and I believe that this community is able to do so, not getting overwhelmed by ego or whatsoever. So that's why I feel inspired, and I will remain inspired as long as it's this way.
Wow, thank you. That's so great to hear. So positive. So uplifting to hear you, from the outside and coming into Circus and to hear your experience that way. Very positive. It's interesting what you said about the imposter, feeling like an imposter. And I wonder if everybody goes through times of feeling like an imposter when they're in their communities. I know I've certainly feel like that sometimes. I'm like, oh, am I really a circus artist, or am I an imposter in here and I don't know? But Circus is so interdisciplinary and so open, and so much built around community that I think the more we talk about it, the less we individually feel like that. And when we really look at it, especially within sort of this like national circus community that has been like really building, the more that sort of imposter feeling just dissipates and can just float away out to sea. Thank you. Alice, welcome. It's your turn.
It's my turn.
I have a question for you. Has COVID shifted your views on community?
Yes, definitely. If it weren't for COVID, La Compagnie des Autres would just not exist. We were a couple of friends living in this neighborhood in Montreal, Hochelaga Maisonneuve, and we would just realize at one point that so many circus workers would live in this neighborhood that we didn't even know about. But suddenly, nobody was traveling all the time, and we were just grounded home and just gathering on the streets to try and do stuff and small initiatives, respecting all the regulations and stuff. And then we realized, like, okay, this circus community is very important for us at the moment, but it's part of a bigger picture, and it's important for us all the time. And what can we do to support it our own way? And at the same time, we were feeling good in our neighborhood, in which where circus is not that present most of the time in Montreal. So that's why we decided to implant, seeds in Hochelaga Maisonneuve and look at it grow, and being part of it, like implement circus in the local community of Hochelaga Maisonneuve, exchange with the people who live there and what they need and what they want and what they like in what we present and what they don't like as well, and how can we bring something else to the local community, the schools, the organizations that are already there, and how can we help the circus community grow stronger with what we can get from the local community. I don't know if it's clear, but La Compagnie des Autres, it all says in the name of it, like it's the company for the others, of the others, but it's also being with the others. So it's really what we want to do. So what we want to do is try and fill the gaps. We have a lot of great companies and places, circus places in Montreal, but between En Piste and La Tehu and Seven Fingers and Le Monastère and the Circus School, there are gaps. And young artists and young companies are struggling sometimes to find the bridge to go from one gap to the other and reach to the funding and get organized and find people who can help them sell their projects and stuff. So that's where we thought, okay, there's a place for us.
Wow. Yeah, it's so interesting that COVID made us really look at our community, and that sense of loss, I think in a lot of ways really revealed the gaps. So it's interesting that you were able to really see that and find your way to help support that. And it kind of calls to what Ruth was talking about the building blocks in a community and that ecology and the ecosystem and all the things that are needed and the balance. It's really interesting to hear that. It sounds like a great project.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So this next question is open to anyone. If anybody wants to jump in and answer this, or everybody can take a turn to respond. So the question is, how do we balance developing new initiatives in our community without discarding existing programs? And kind of, yeah, maybe I'll just leave it at that. So how do we balance the development of new initiatives without discarding or overpowering, or knowing that perhaps there's disruption in an ecosystem, in a balance, when we put new ideas out or new initiatives? Is that okay? How do we manage that? Yeah.
Well, one thing that comes to, I don't think this is on.
Yep. Good now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing that comes to mind is that, so COVID was an event, an intervention, right? A massive, massive disruption. So it brings up to me the dimension of the question you're asking, pre-COVID, post-COVID. You know, for sure, we launch new initiatives to respond to circumstances. And so the best question always when you have a new idea is why? Why now? Whether it's a new creation or a new program or a new company, whatever it is, it's always good to have a good reason, you know, a good answer to that question, why now? And for sure with COVID, it just radically changed everything, and so there's a lot of many answers right now to the why now, and you know, what is the best expression? How do we react to these new circumstances innovatively and in ways that support artists, right? But I think there's a lot of companies who, you know, experienced COVID with so many projects already in the works, many works already on tour. So that question you asked also comes to mind about all of that, what had been built up to that point, you know, how are companies and organizations making choices to either to retire some things, or to keep them alive, or to reinvent, adapt existing works, and it seems to me to you know, it's worth appreciating the work that the many years of work that went into building something that just because it got interrupted shouldn't mean that it should then be retired just because of the, you know, so finding ways to kind of you know, help those kind of limping projects over the hump, you know. So do they need to be adapted? You know, some things, yes, probably should be retired, but not everything. And you know, how do you kind of help those things to make that adaptation that's required, rather than completely reinventing or, you know, something new?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think that energy is finite, and at some point, you know, we all take on many projects, and then we get new ideas and want to go in a different direction. That can be the perfect time to mentor someone else into a position of leadership. So you can take up incomers, let them run the existing program, and then head off in a new direction.
Yeah, I love the idea of mentorship. It's a really interesting thing for like legacy and mentorship and all the different stages in a circus career.
And it also lends to growth. You know, sometimes you might have programs that it's time to retire, but then it just might simply be time to add something new. Like, I love all of the depth that you were talking about in a community, like everything from the incubation place for the new artists to the critics. I mean, but you need a lot of people working in a community to populate those jobs. So you need to pull people along with you, right?
You know, as far as the old projects, they evolve into other projects, they die and new projects replace them, or they, you know, so different things happen. Always struggling. You know, you think if you close your eyes and think of every movie you've ever seen about the circus, it's about them not going bankrupt.
Yeah.
You know, how are we going to save this circus?
True stories.
So I've always tried to have 4 or 5 projects that I wanted to do. Some more than others, and then wherever the resources and stuff came upon it, I'd take that one, obviously, because that's the one I could do. But the most important thing was I wanted to do all of them. I never wanted to take on, like Nasib was saying this morning, something that you don't want to do just because the money's there. But it's nice to have a range of projects that you're interested in, and some more than others. But you know, the one you really want to do might not attract the funding that you want, but at least someone else might say, "Oh, I love that one. Okay, let's do that one. I still want to do it, so let's do that one." So that's a you know, a survival strategy that's worked for us.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's interesting. Catherine?
Well, if I may add, I also think that arriving with something new or a new project doesn't automatically mean to kill the previous one or whatsoever. Sometimes it's a proper time, and sometimes it's not, and sometimes it's also just an evolution. You know, that the project number one led to project number two and to project number three. So it's about evolving and testing and creating new things. And now, when something as sudden and harsh as COVID happened, I think it was a first for all of us, pretty much. We were not expecting it. It was not, yeah. So, you know, it of course, it does a bit of an effect like, whoa, okay, what do we do, you know? But also, I mean, you can roll yourself in a little ball and freak out, or you can also just take the time to, you know, take a step back and think. And to me, it was not all positive. It was definitely not all positive. It was difficult for a lot of people. But one thing that it did is definitely bring us all outside of our comfort zone. And as tacky as it can sound, it's really the case. And a year and a half after, I think that very interesting initiatives were born out of that, or are evolving right now as we speak, and going towards something different, or just not necessarily different, but just, you know, we're good at adapting. I'm very proud of our community for that, trying new things, new ideas, and we have example right here with Sanctuary, with La Compagnie des Autres. So yes, of course, we had to let go some stuff that we were not ready to let go, or that we are very sad to put to sleep for a couple months, years, we don't know. But in the meantime, something different is happening. And I think that all of that together in a couple of years is going to lead us to another level again. So let's see. But I like to try to see the positive side of everything, as harsh as it can be. And as soon as 18 months later, we can definitely see that some new, exciting, interesting stuff happened. And some people that never had the chance to team up together and work together did. And it's great. The result is great and interesting to contemplate. And then, yeah, I'm looking forward to see what's going to come out of all of this after.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's so interesting, this idea of like, with loss, there's always something found and then something lost. And it's just always changing and evolving. And yeah, we kind of, like, it's okay to kind of go deep into the freak out a little bit. It's okay, but then, you know, if you can emerge, there's something new. There's something new, even though the loss was so hard. It's a lot of small ball action for a while. Would you like to add?
Well, on the scale of community, I would say authenticity and partnership. I've worked with organizations that were all about secrets, like it's my idea, I don't want to share it for now. We're not ready to share it with anyone because someone might steal it from us. And then I've worked with organizations that are totally the opposite, and they're all about sharing as soon as the idea is here. Oh, let's share and let's talk and let's see where it gets us, because altogether we get stronger and the idea is going to be even stronger. And if everyone can relate to this because they feel they are part of it, then it's just it just brings us as a group, as a community, way further. And that's what we try to do with La Compagnie des Autres. We talk to so many people during the process. And we don't want to replace anyone. It's not the idea. But we want to be part of it and do not, step on anyone's feet. It's really not the idea. On the contrary, it's just also help bring the others together, anyway. So, partnership and authenticity for me would, like there is no idea that needs to be replaced. There is just a feeling that maybe as a group, as a community, we're getting somewhere a bit different, and it's fine. And so let's try this way.
Can I add something
Absolutely.
to that?
Yes, please.
It kind of what you're saying reminds me of the idea of a conversation. It's you say something and that inspires someone to think of something and then respond in a way. And I feel like the circus community, it's kind of like that is, you know, certain companies have built a more established like base layer that then constantly can be evolved on, and you try this and then that makes you think, oh, but what if we could do it like this, and what if we could do it like this? And so it's this constant back and forth and evolution, and there's place for both, but it's a dialogue kind of. And then also the idea of belonging, I think that's really important for everyone. Everyone needs to feel that they belong, and I guess having a community gives you a space to be and to feel like you have purpose. And I think when people feel like they have purpose, they're able to work much harder, or not necessarily work harder, but to continue creating or continue doing what they feel their purpose is. And I notice that myself in working in different environments. When I feel valued and when I feel like the work that I'm doing is moving forward, then it's so much easier to want to contribute and to want to like be there, be a team player. And when you feel more like you can't do anything or you feel a bit blocked, then it's harder to stay inspired. So I think community is really important for that, to like leave place for people to find where they belong and support them in their strengths, I guess.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's kind of like what you were just saying is sort of the opposite of the imposter feeling that you had mentioned, Kathleen. When you have that imposter feeling, it's harder to contribute, you don't want to speak up, you don't want to share your ideas, you feel a bit insecure. It's not as strong. It creates that separation, which is just a weaker outcome. And like what you're saying, when you feel connected with community, you can contribute, you can voice your opinions, you can add, and it's just everybody grows together. Yeah, it's really interesting. So I'm gonna open up, I have many, many more questions, but I'm going to ask the audience if anybody has any questions that they would like to put out to, I see my friend in the back, hi, put out to the group. If there's anybody in our live audience or even joining us online that has any questions, we are open to that. Yeah. You can ask the question, and I'm going to repeat it so that our friends online can hear it really clearly through the microphone.
Okay, I wrote it down so I could remember it, but I'm going to try to condense. So I would love for some of you guys, if you have thoughts on the subject, to talk about, in reference to community, how in a positive way we can straddle that narrow line between being advocates for safety regarding things like training progressions, rigging and equipment standards, and stuff like that, because there's a lot of circus now that has blown up on social media, and that is definitely broadened our community a lot. But there is a very fine line between being an advocate for safety and knowing that things like insurance rates going up impacts our community versus gatekeeping when there are so many people who are passionate about circus, and everyone starts as a beginner without knowledge of that stuff.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's a very long question.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to try to paraphrase this and let me know if I got it or didn't get it. So it's almost, your question is almost looking at the broader circus community, asking about that, and then even moving into social media community, because that is certainly part of our community now, social media. And how do we manage within a greater community some safety communications with and without sort of being gatekeepers around that?
Yeah, like how do we advocate for safety in a community that we know has risk while still making a place for everyone at the table?
Yeah, okay, so really specifically around safety in the broader circus community, how do we advocate for safety in our large community, our large circus community that includes online? Yeah, thank you.
Without excluding.
Without excluding, yeah. Does anybody feel like they can jump into that? Yeah, Annie.
I'll start. So with running a school, this is a topic we deal with all of the time. And social media and the internet has really changed our industry for both positive and negative reasons, for exactly what you're talking about, Tanya. The safety issue is huge. So we have to be an example. We have to be a role model. Our rigging has to be very selected, and everything has to be professional, everything has to be safe. The standards in our studio have to be as high as possible. And we have to convey those good habits to our students. We have to educate people as to why. Why do we use triple locking steel carabiners instead of, aluminum ones? Why do we have crash mats instead of panel mats or no mats? Why do we have progressions? We get a lot of people in who trained somewhere else. We've learned that we have to do assessments on everyone who walks in the door. We want to share, we want to teach, we don't want to exclude, but we have curriculum. So if a student can't do A, they're not going to learn B. If they can't do B, they're not going to learn C. They might think they're doing C, but without the technique that is required to keep them safe. So we move them, we tell them, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you did this, so we're going to put you here. People don't always like to hear that, but we've decided that it's our responsibility in our studio, not only to keep people safe, but to put these good working practices out there. And then people can decide if they want to stay with us or they want to go elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you.
I would have pretty much the same kind of response, but you meant it for students and people who are learning right now. My perspective is more when managing tours and everything. And one of the key point for me is to be able to say no and to also encourage the artist to say no when it's too much. So there are limits, and it needs to be clearly defined. Limits can be from several matters. I mean, first of all, of course, proper venues and equipment is definitely a good thing. We make sure that this is there in the first place, but then there's a number of shows that you can perform in a week, in a day, or before having a sole day off in order to and so at some point, even if it's interesting, even if the festival is big, even if the contract is very appealing, if it makes no sense, it makes no sense. It is safety first, and as managing people around the tour, it's something that's very, very important, but also we need to transmit that to the touring people as well. Technicians are much easier to convince than artists, usually. But yeah, I think that we need to stick to those limits, no matter how interesting the opportunity seems to be. There's no way do 4 shows in a day. There's no way do 12 shows in a week. And if some are crazy enough to say yes, well, let them go, but not under my watch for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
And also online. It is different now. You're teaching someone online. If they have their equipment, you don't see their equipment. You don't know how they're approaching it, and you often don't even see them. So it's. I know the insurance companies have now all kinds of these online teaching policies that I never saw before. So they're concerned about it. They noticed it, and I don't know how you do that if you're teaching people certain techniques and you don't see them. So online teaching it really needs to be looked at and thought through before you kind of get into doing it. I think when the pandemic started, everyone was doing it, and having their classes online and everything else. But then you got to think, wait a minute, it's a lot different doing it when they're home instead of when they're in your studio. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I think you got to consider and have a plan for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the shift to online, there's maybe some sort of it would be a good idea to get together and start to develop some safety codes that could be shared with bigger communities like the online community, and just start to raise awareness, because I think even within the circus community, sometimes you don't know exactly what is up to par. And it's really, we worked recently with a rigger, and he told us that it's always important to check each other's work. And he said some riggers get upset if you ask a question and you're like, oh, like, what is that actually exactly there? And they'll be like, I know what I'm doing. And he said that is like the total wrong attitude to have. And the attitude to have is ask as many questions as you want, triple, double, quadruple, check my work, do whatever you want. And he's been working, for 40 years with in rigging. And so I think just having open dialogue and that ability to ask questions, and it's not when concerned to safety, and then also to be starting to develop something to share with the greater community could be helpful, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. We got a thumbs up for the answer. Is there any other questions, or I wonder if there's anyone? Oh, I see some hands. I'm wondering if there's any online. We'll come back to you. Oh, yes. Anna has it.
First hybrid event, we have online questions.
Yeah, let's take one of our virtual watchers here. So, from a virtual viewer, Annie and others have mentioned momentum and talked about this a little. Things are easier when they are flowing. What are some things that you have done to make community even without momentum or flow? Do I need to repeat that? Yeah, I'll repeat it again. So Annie and others have talked about momentum. Things are easier when they are flowing. What are some things, as an example, what are some things that you have done to make community even without momentum or flow?
Okay, I can start. So we can maybe refer to, let's say, one event that happened lately that really was the opposite of momentum. So the happening of COVID is to me the total opposite of momentum for what we do. And I think that, there was great example of, again, repeating a bit, but what came out of that. But I think when the momentum's not there, when you don't know where to go, when you don't know what's possible, I think it's an exercise of stepping back, a lot of resilience, take the time to think and talk with your people around you, people of your community. There's a beautiful éventail, I would say, of persona in this community here. So there's, venues, performer, management, creators, educator, and also former artists. So I think that all together, and it's exactly what we did, I think. There was a counter momentum. We were all very much shocked by that. Our usual activities stopped within hours. And yeah, I think resilience and conversation and taking a step back gave us the opportunity to come up with something different and interesting with absolutely no momentum at all. So yeah, those would be, I think, the...
Mm-hmm.
To build on what you're saying, the catalyst, the word catalyst comes to mind. So like momentum means it's already happening, right? Or flow means that refers to something that's already in motion. But how do you instigate? How do you get it into motion? COVID's an excellent example of a horrific, awful, negative disruptor, but not all disruptors have to be negative. You can put a provocation or a disruption. I think if the questioner is looking for a way to kind of ignite something, there's certainly ways to create catalytic experiences that generate reactive adaptation, or that might or might not provoke some growth and momentum. So what does a catalyst look like? It depends on your community, your goals, your objectives, but certainly new ideas, new people. I'm continual advocate for international exchange and in the arts, and one big reason is because sometimes a visit from an international artist or company to a community that hasn't seen a work from that community before can really be a great catalytic event to where new ideas are presented, and after that, everybody in that local community is kind of wrestling together with, well, wow, it's an impact, so that would be my response, is that whether it's a negative, hopefully you're not bringing a negative disruption, you're bringing a positive one, but disrupt, why not?
I'll just continue the conversation. We're artists, we're creators, we make something from nothing. So this is the perfect time. If nothing is happening, if there isn't any momentum, it's the perfect time to sit and reflect and think about who you are and how you want to express, or what you want to express at that moment, at that time, in that place. And then you can share your idea with others and start to generate that momentum. Be the catalyst.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that as well. When you're looking for something, that catalyst, you can also start small. You don't have to start on a huge scale. You can just start with just a few people, your close friends even, and say like, hey, I have this, I don't have any ideas right now, but do you want to get together and just improvise or try something? I don't know what we're gonna do, and so many people will say your close friends will want to come, and we'll be like, okay, let's try to figure something out. And then once you're in that room together, something could potentially come out of it and something might not, but what will have happened is you will have done something with your community, and I think that can just jumpstart. You never know what's gonna happen when you actually get out and do something.
It's interesting. Just hearing everybody's responses, it makes me just sort of think, is there ever no momentum? Because we're looking in one direction, and COVID is such an example of this. We were, going in one direction, and really that got disrupted, and we looked the other way, and there's this whole other world, like you were talking about the gaps. And suddenly, you call up your friends, you do some improvising, and then suddenly you have a new collective and a new show. And it's, the momentum is sort of always there, but where are you finding it? And taking the moment to take a breath and reflect, and drawing from your community, from your friends, which is your community. It's interesting. And I was thinking too, Ruth, like you said, your passion with international exchange, the MIC working groups that came out of COVID and pivoting the MIC conference is such an example of no momentum to momentum too, and so many things that have come out of that. I think probably most of us in this room have an example of something that's come out of that. So yeah, that's
if
really
I might, actually, it's crazy how quickly and substantially the membership grew last year. And I mean, on day one, it was probably not the first expectation you guys had, So I think that the biggest mistake in any circumstances would be to tire yourself trying to swim against current. So this idea of no momentum is interesting. Sometimes it's not super big or super obvious, but it's just as hard as it can be. Sometimes you need to let go and go with the flow. So yeah.
And the smallest actions. I don't know what to do, but let's start by being in the same room. Maybe, let's start there. Or even online, virtually, can we meet virtually and improvise? Something we maybe wouldn't have done before.
Yeah, and if you're alone at home, nothing's gonna get done with other people, whereas if you just go somewhere, you really never know what's gonna come out of it.
Yeah. My 6 and 8-year-old became my best collaborators and my best audience and my buddies. Yeah, kind of my best. I'm going to come back to our physical audience. Martin, do you have a question? You want to?
On this topic of cultural appropriation has become a sensitive one, the cultural appropriation that we'll do. Even though Circus is a melting pot. It's a mix of dance, theater, music, acrobatics, and then because people are training and creating in their own countries, they all meet, and from a class of 8, you can have 8 countries. My question is, where do you draw the line between being inspired by and taking something from other culture or communities? Because sometimes I feel like, why can't a group from South Africa can do an Argentinian show with tango and bolas, and or why can't a small group in a Quebec village that went to Sweden and was taken by the culture, or they do these dance, those things. I have a problem with this concept that, oh, it's cultural appropriation. Yeah, but I was moved by what I saw. How can't I be inspired to create something similar? So where is the line for communities between you were inspired by what I did or you stole what I do? Where is the line for communities?
Okay, so I'm going to try to rephrase that for the microphone for our friends joining us online. And Martin, you let me know if I'm answering or asking it correctly or not. So the question is around cultural appropriation versus inspired by. And what is the line, or how do we sort of manage that inspiration versus cultural appropriation in Circus, and from being inspired by one community and bringing that inspiration into another community? And how do we sort of balance that or manage that? Yeah, thumbs up.
Okay. I would just preface by saying that I don't feel like I'm fully competent to answer that question. I think that I would rather have a little, so I'm just going to speak off the cuff, but I would like to educate myself more about it. I think this issue has really evolved over time. So what was considered incredibly inclusive in 1965 or 75 would now be considered incredibly exclusive today. So one example is, some of the great avant-garde artists of the 70s whose work, and I'm thinking not just circus but performing arts in general, whose work is considered iconic and foundational for the performing arts, would study, for example, a French director studying kabuki puppetry and then integrating kabuki puppetry into their creations, and then that was considered kind of a global perspective and multicultural, and that was considered quite progressive at that time compared to only using their own traditions that they came from. And now something like that would be considered cultural appropriation because it wasn't the kabuki artist from Japan trained in kabuki who came to collaborate. It was the director who learned it and then brought it and put it in their own show. So I think it's really a kind of evolution of the idea of how do we work with difference. Are you only allowed to represent the thing that you are from, or are you allowed to allow your own perspective to be populated by lots of inspiration? It's a great question. For me, the kind of key question is, did you think to include the person who is from that, who for whom that is their tradition? So the question of inclusion is kind of more important than necessarily the answer. That's what I've observed. So basically, something where you have no background in a certain thing, but you decide to just kind of include it because you love it, versus calling someone who actually is from that particular community or really did study it for 20 years in that place or whatever, and give them the chance to contribute, or maybe even advise on the project. It's having that reflexive inclusion that right now seems to be kind of the most urgent. And then the other side of it is that doing what you know, starting from what you know as a creator, is so helpful to avoid cliche, and avoiding cliche is so important, because if you just work with cliches, you have to be the best ever. But if you self-express with what you know, actually, it helps to avoid cliches. So sometimes, be inspired, expose yourself to anything, everything, fantastic, but then really come from an authentic place in your own expression, and it will help you avoid cliche. And I think part of the culture appropriation thing is about cliches also, because it's kind of like, well, if I wasn't, if I didn't call the person who really knows about this, and I just kind of grabbed what I saw because I liked it, the chances that you're landing on a cliche, superficial version of that are pretty high, So I think it has to do with also kind of that relationship with authentic self as an artist. That's my response.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to repeat what you just said for our listeners, and the asker in the audience likes the answer. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else want to jump into that question?
Well, I was actually going to say almost the similar thing, that in my opinion, inclusion and mainly inclusion is the most important part of, if something inspires you, to talk to that group of people and see how you could then collaborate with them rather than just take. Maybe you can involve them in your project, or maybe you can see how you can, since that culture inspires you, how you can highlight yourself and that culture instead of just yourself. And many cultures that have things, sort of taken from them historically, the reason that representation is important is because that needs to be shown where it came from, the history. And so I think just by including them it changes everything, So I think that's exactly
that context element is that's a really good point. So like this aspect of what makes something cliche is because it's superficial and
or
acontextual.
A caricature, kind of.
Exactly. So having it be contextualized is another aspect of kind of is avoiding cliche, which is better for all art.
The thing is, people do it because they love it. They are inspired by it. I mean, I think a really great example is music. R&B music and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones are completely inspired by black musicians, and luckily we're able to then put the focus back on black musicians and get them more into the mainstream, which is great that they did that. Not all of them did that. They just took the music and made the millions, and the person who wrote the song never got anything. So it is a big evolution that's still going on. And you assimilate all those things that you love, and we're artists, so we're just taking it from everywhere. But you got to do it, like Ruth said, because of what you're trying to say, and go back to the person who's doing. We have Terence Littleton has completely influenced our circus and all the hoop dancers in St. John's, because he's this incredible world champion hoop dancer, and the influence he's had on Indigenous youth and Labrador and stuff is huge, but the influence he's had on the hoop dancing community in St. John's is also huge. They use his techniques and moves. He shared them. He gave them to them. He showed them how to do it, and it's really enriched that culture here. So it's got to be on an equal level, and it's got to be shared, and it's got to be given to you. It's a gift you're given, but you got to get the gift first. You can't just take it, I don't think. You have to share it.
Well, ditto. And even for the part where I don't feel educated enough to, give a very elaborate answer on that, but I think the intention is really important as well, as you mentioned, and hopefully is to pay tribute, hopefully is to acknowledge, or hopefully is to share something that moved you, frustrated you, that you feel like you need to put some light on. So intention is really important, I think, and also making sure that it's wanted, because from the, I guess, community, or that you would like to acknowledge or pay tribute, or that you've been moved by. So sometimes intentions are really good, but on the other hand, it's really not wished for. So you need to be careful with that, and I'd say that, and definitely include, and being advised, make sure you go the right direction. So.
It all comes down to treating everybody with honor and respect, whether they're in your community or outside of your community. Honor and respect their wishes. Do they wish to be included? Do they not want to be included? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to ask one more question to the panelists before we close things up. So my closing question is, I'm asking you, can you please share a dream with us? So like finances and logistics aside, what would be your dream to see in the Canadian circus community?
I have an answer.
That was so
I
swift.
would love to see 6 tohus, regional tohus, everywhere. Like
all right.
that
Canada
way,
Council of
someone can
Heritage.
build a show for circus in a venue that supports circus, and then tour that show all over the country.
Why only 6? Why not?
So start with 6.
Amazing. Dreams. Share your dreams, friends.
I'm still thinking. I wasn't ready for that one.
Yeah.
I can say I have 3. So one is that, so I'm American, USA, and it's been amazing to live in Canada during this period in which the social safety net really kicked in, and to watch the safety net happen and support, and that's national and provincial. So I guess but I have obviously noticed like Quebec has incredible art support, so I would wish that other provinces would match that, so that would be one wish. And I think you would get 6 or 12 tohus if that happened.
Yes, we would.
And the second is that something I've noticed as, the disruption of COVID led to a lot of suffering, a lot of really hard times, but it also led to a lot of creations, some of which have been discussed today. So my wish is that those creations find ways to be sustained, and that kind of effervescence not be snuffed out by a return to normal, that it can be normal and so that people can have livelihoods and also be making smaller works that are self-expressive and, find lives for those works that are, sustainable and mean that they can kind of keep going. So we'll do what we can at Tohu, but we're only one institution. So my wish is that continues to blossom and grow. And then I also wish that the field of artists doing circus in Canada could become more diverse across the board, that more diverse artists from different backgrounds and different populations become part of the circus community, and different kinds of artistic ambitions also, and so that you have just growth and different expressions and different voices and different, cross-disciplinary collaborations that yield different ideas, and so just more, and that's my wish.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Ruth.
That's a long wish. Well, I have to follow you on that. Like, your third one is my big one, like more diversity, more voices, more way of doing things, like different ways of doing things. I think exactly like during the pandemic, new voices arose, I don't know. And we have to help them like grow and take more with them after. Like, I'll speak for the Montreal circus community, but there used to be one major voice, one major way of doing things, and I think from the past 2 years we started seeing new ways, new voices, new visions, who wants to do things differently, and I think that's very inspiring, and I wish for that to get stronger.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
I think my wish would be to share kind of the core values of the circus community with the maybe other communities in Canada, and the ideas that we all discussed today about bringing people up, bringing the community up, and how that benefits everyone. And I think to just kind of plant that seed and have that spread into other sectors, I suppose, I think would be really wonderful. And similar to communities that don't even know that circus exists and that that's a viable career path. I think that so many people would benefit from the mentality that we have, that the community has, of like sharing and growth and openness.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
And I'd certainly echo what Ruth said about diversity. I find that the most refreshing, mind-blowing thing to see those other viewpoints come in, and I think we desperately need them. And also the way that youth now expresses themselves. I always thought of the circus as physical arts and the physicality, and just any kind of way that people express themselves physically, and to turn that into circus, and it really important. And I guess the other thing is, since the first festival that we've had, I mean, that first festival, I met all the circus artists and companies that were in Atlantic Canada, and immediately we had this kindred spiritness. We had all gone through the same thing, and also then met you, Holly and Annie, who were also there's as everyone knows, there's a Quebec circus culture which is fantastic and has inspired us all, and then there's this whole across Canada of smaller circuses that do theater, circus, schools, everything to stay alive. And watching that community grow and watching it feed from Quebec, and then Quebec see that and be inspired by that because of how we've managed to survive. It's a lesson there, I think. And to see that suddenly become one kind of thing, one kind of thread instead of two or five or six is really exciting and nourishing for me out here, and I think for you guys too. And I love watching that grow.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
And so I have to finish.
A beautiful dream.
It's better be good, yeah. No, I would wish for, from my point of view right now, things are shifting a bit, and I'm not talking about COVID. Mostly in Quebec, Canada, I won't say for anywhere else, but I feel like there's a change of generation that's upcoming. The artists are always graduating and evolving, but from the company management and also in the venues, the presenters, the festival managers, it's weird how there's a generality where we know that we will need the next generation to take over soon, as presenters, as managers and administrative team for the companies as well. So I wish for LT, next generation, not new, but next generation, that will remember where we are coming from, that will remember the values that we all share as a community, that will remain humble and creative, and that when things go back to some sort of normal, we don't just, as you said, scratch everything and go back to what we used to do. I really wish that we can learn from that and evolve in a healthy way and remember what happened and that it could happen again and how we went out of it, like still healthy in our mind, quite. So yeah. So I wish that we will remember, we won't forget, and that we will keep evolving with this in mind.
Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you. Great. I thank you so much, everyone, for being here and sharing your beautiful ideas. I feel, I hope you're all inspired, or feeling as inspired as I am, at least. It's so wonderful to talk about community. I just want to have a big group hug with everyone. But instead, we have a gift to show you. This wonderful technology and this beautiful space. The visual scribe is going to share what she has drawn and illustrated for us on this screen. And I think those of you joining us online are able to see it too. Wow. Wow, that's beautiful. Wow. Thank you, Tanya. Yeah, Tanya, is there something you want to share with us, or I wonder if you can?
Can I speak? Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you.
Hooray, excellent. I wasn't sure. Well, thank you so much, panel, for sharing such amazing insights. And we've captured this around a theme of that ecosystem, which I thought was so beautiful that you started off with here in the beginning, and growing, and how the roots connect everyone underneath, helping those grow who are merging or struggling. And we have our building blocks of community listed up here around education, spaces, venues, journalism, and support. And there's a beautiful thread that we connected at the top here around idea sharing and building and yes and that we hear so often in improv. But that this piece is really important, to be inspired by cultures, but to include and collaborate with people of that culture, and to base this on honor and respect is very important. This big theme of around we are stronger together, that we are all interconnected, and creating spaces for new voices to emerge. So as we follow our thread here around the ecosystem and resiliency, how does that change and evolve and shift with challenges that we face, and how this can be a catalyst for new and what might emerge for the future. So thank you. That was a very beautiful sharing.
Wow, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you to our panelists. So we're going to close our panel now. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We have the space, I think, for another half hour or so. So you're welcome to stay and mingle if you have any one-on-one questions for the panelists. I'm sure they probably won't mind that, though they're officially off the hook now. But yeah, so thank you so much. We look forward to enjoying the rest of the festival. And thank you again to Wonderbolt and to the festival in general for having us and all their beautiful work that they're bringing together. Thank you, Holly. Oh, and to the rooms. Oh, yes, and of course there's the gala tonight at the rooms. So there's some beautiful performances happening there. So we hope to see everyone there as well. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.